Mariana Mazzucato, in your books you use the iPhone as a potent mythbuster about the role of private sector entrepreneurs versus the role of governments. What's the real story of the development of the iPhone?
So we often assume that value is created in business, and at best what the public sector does is fund the education or the infrastructure. But if you ask yourself what actually makes the iPhone smart and not stupid, it's all these publicly funded technologies, the internet, GPS, touchscreen, and Siri. There was patient, long-term finance actually provided by the state through different types of organizations. And that story is simply not told. So there's a whole book on Steve Jobs where not one page, not one paragraph, not one sentence, not one little word on any of that public investment.
Well, your broader point is that the public sector has a crucial but currently under-recognised and underappreciated role to play in adding value to the economy. You argue that changing that mindset should come about via specific missions. Can you explain how these would work?
So getting to the moon and back again in a generation required lots of different sectors to invest and innovate. That required, not just aeronautics, but also nutrition and textiles. And it required then government instruments like procurement and prize schemes to be used to actually crowd in and incentivize different types of activity that was actually goal-oriented. So, I think the public sector needs to refined its confidence, its ability to imagine, to dream big, but also then to structure itself through both institution building, but also its instruments to really target activity towards solving these really difficult challenges.
At the political level, it requires a bit of courage, doesn't it, that somebody's prepared to make that really big call, like saying we're going to cure cancer or go to the moon.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny. I often say that I walk into meetings with governments worldwide as an economist, and I walk out as a life coach, because there's real depression within the civil service, but it's become almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that the way we're training people inside the state has been actually to, at best, talk about them as enabling, facilitating, de-risking the private sector, when actually these moonshot programs around health and energy require not fixing markets, but co-creating and co-shaping them. And that really requires also different types of capabilities and capacities within state institutions, which unfortunately we've seen the opposite of that. We've seen an increasing outsourcing, also privatization, and one might actually take an ideological stance against that, but it's also almost become inevitable because we're defunding and also not investing in these capabilities. It also makes it harder sometimes for these public institutions to be dynamic partners.
The China example is an interesting one because nobody really sort of says, oh, well, look at the impact of government investment. Why do you think that is?
I think it's very interesting because I think China has learned what happened in Silicon Valley and Trump is unlearning it. China is very adaptable. It kind of learns the lessons. I feel like it's looking around the world and trying to better understand how the West, particular Western countries, actually achieved competitiveness. And so I think what China is doing today, or at least trying to do around green, is again providing that patient long-term finance through different types of institutions, including the China Development Bank, which is a public bank, which unlike the private financial sector around the world, it's actually providing that patient long-term finance.
Thank you so much for talking to 730.
Thank you very much.